Hello, everyone. This is Kevin back. I want to talk about a quick reporting scenario pertinent to the group policy reporting pack that we provide. I'm going to jump in real quick. I want to address this from a PowerShell perspective. So, in the spirit of a theme, we've been talking a lot lately about automation, and hopefully, we'll get a quantity of content together that will help us sort of build a library and be a little bit less random, but this one may come across as a bit out of the blue. So here's my scenario. I have a bunch of GPOs, bunch of settings. I want to find, I have a problem, and I know that this computer that's receiving configuration is receiving a list of GPOs, right there. They have a list of GPOs that they're processing, and I need to get down to the settings that are problematic. And so I need to find possibly duplicate settings or conflicting settings or whatever. For those of you who are aware, great, but some of you may not have explored this yet. With the reporting pack, we have a commandlet called export SDM GP settings. And that commandlet allows me to run some reports. So I'm going to start with just duplicate settings. And I have to type that correctly. Typos count here. Now I'm going to return an error. I want to sort of make a point. If I try to run a report, it's going to go and find all of my GPOs. It's going to grab that data. It's going to try to compile that data into a report, a PDF by default. And I haven't given it enough information to be successful here. It's actually not what I want it to do. I don't want a PDF report. I just want to dump the duplicate settings into the pipeline so that I can start working with them. So you see this error. I could not find part of the path. See Windows System 32 temp GPO dupe settings, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I wanted. I need to call on a switch here called report object. And that's telling the commandlet, hey, grab this data, but instead of dumping it as a PDF, dump it out as an object or a series of objects or collection of objects into the pipeline. Now, be aware that the reality is if you are in a very large organization, there's going to be some time here, right? I'm in a small demo lab. So if you're trying to query thousands upon thousands of settings and hundreds of GPOs, it's going to take you a bit of time. Look into PowerShell jobs, how you can do this in the background. All right, so what came out was all of the duplicates that exist in my environment. May be interesting, but not super helpful, at least right away. We need to reason over this data and understand what's in here. Now, I did a little examples. I set up some examples. One of the things that I like to do that allows me to look at the data in a more sort of interactive model instead of just right from the console is I can use this out grid view commandlet. And I can dump the results of my commandlet out to the grid so I can actually look at this information. And what I can do in here, if you're not familiar with it, is actually pretty great. I can do some filters. So I can say, let's just look at GPPref. So as you notice, it narrowed down to only objects that meet that criteria. Okay. I can also get a little bit more explicit here. So I can add specific criteria that says, oh, GPO name has to equal underscore finance or whatever. Okay. I can also, to carry that one step farther, I can choose what columns that I want to provide in here. So it allows me to reason over the data a little bit. It's super helpful to me. Group ID is what I want to trigger off of. This group ID attribute or property is going to be the key piece of information that ties together the duplicate settings. So I'll give you an example. Here, number 6, 2 items with group ID 6. One GPO is called GPPrefTest2, one is called GPPrefTest1. I have the exact same setting and the exact same value. That's what makes it a duplicate. Okay, so really good to know, really good to be aware of. And that's the piece of data that I want to use. Okay, now back to PowerShell. So since I want to use that piece of information, but I can't very well query across my entire environment for that piece of information, I'd be guessing. What I want to do is find in the duplicate settings only an object where the GPO name equals a certain GPO. Okay, so here's the scenario. Let me walk through it in a little bit more detail. I want to use the where object commandlet, and I want to put a criterion here that says GPO name equals, and I'll use one of my GPOs. So now I'm going to say, okay, everything, all of the GPOs with duplicate settings are going to the pipeline, but only show me duplicate settings for this GPO, i.e. test 1. Now, just to be clear, I'm not going to be done here, but what I did return was a setting in this GPO that is duplicate somewhere, and that group ID that shows the duplicate is actually number 15. So now I'm going to take it a next step. So now I could, if I'm talking about just doing this interactively, instead of GPO name, let's talk about group ID and equals 15. So now I'm going to run it again. I know that 15 is the group ID that my GPO IE test has a duplicate setting. And now I've returned 3 GPOs, empty GPO, IE test 1 GPO, IE test 2 GPO that all have dupes. So that's going to be able to show me, maybe this is where my issue is coming from, and I can narrow it down. Now, keep following. There's going to be other scenarios where we'll do the full automation end to end and actually do the cleanup and whatever, but this is a really good start. The last thing that I did here was those last 2 steps. It's super easy to combine that into one. So what I do is, if you see in line 19, I take that export SDMGP settings where the GPO name is IE test. So I'm looking for dupe settings related to a specific GPO, but only take the group ID and shove that into a variable. So now line 20 takes that variable and uses it as an attribute, or pipes uses it in the pipe when we say where object group ID equals. So now instead of having to guess what the group ID is, it's right there. So if I were to run both of these lines together, it's not step by step. I get it one fell swoop. I'm going to take that farther, and I'm going to create advanced function possibly that I can say find dupe settings with an attribute or a parameter called GPO name. So find dupe settings hyphen IE test 1, or find dupe settings hyphen GPO name IE test 1 go. Okay, so anyway, very cool, very easy once you get the hang of it and the flow of how you're doing things in PowerShell. But keep an eye up here and let us know if you have any feedback, because we want to make these scenarios really pop for you, and we're happy to help. So thanks.